What's up, everybody? This episode with David Mobley was recorded right after the PLDA Tour event down in Florida. David is a multiple-time world champion in long drive and a very accomplished tournament golfer as well. He's been known for years as one of the most consistent ball strikers in long drive and one of the best at flighting shots, controlling the trajectory and spin and all of that. In this conversation, he shares a lot of insight into how he does that. He also opened up with me about some really personal stuff that he's gone through in his life and how he's overcome that. So anybody going through a similar thing, I think, will benefit from as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Also, this episode is sponsored in part by LagShot, my favorite training aid. So click the link in the description below or go to lagshotgolf.com/crush for 15% off.
I'm sure it sounds like we both had bad experiences, but we've also had good ones.
Yes, we have.
And that makes them stand out more.
Yeah.
So we're here in Jupiter, Florida. We just had the 2022 Sunshine Smash. I believe it's the inaugural Sunshine Smash here at the Polo Grounds. Have you ever seen a flatter grid for this?
This is absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
beautiful,
nice,
isn't it?
huh?
Yeah.
Now it's interesting. You see, like we were talking a little bit about this maybe a week ago on the phone, but there's a split in long drive where you have some people maybe came from a baseball background or they're just athletic and they're really fast.
Or hockey, don't forget.
Hockey, yeah,
if
of
they're
course.
from Canada, they're hockey.
That's right.
I mean, they don't have baseball there, do they? I mean, Canadians are all hockey players.
I think it's really cool that long drive is growing and that we're getting people from other sport backgrounds that now are coming into it, and it's expanding it even more.
Well, I think that's why the speeds have jumped so high.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back in those days, you were limited because the equipment just couldn't handle the speed. But the other thing too was the understanding of how to hit a golf ball long. Was predicated on the technique, the way the equipment was designed, and the technique that was universally used to do it. In the new generation, and Zubak changed the game. Jason Zubak just absolutely changed the whole game of long drive and his approach and what he did for the sport. He took it to the level like Tiger did the PGA Tour. He took long drive to a level where everybody, back in the day, it was just like, bucket of beer with your buddies, you drink, you partied, you just went out and hit golf balls. When Zubak showed up, all this training and workout, we had some guys, Jerry James, a bodybuilding champion, Justin's dad, Frank Miller was another, guy that worked out. We had a few of those guys, but pretty much most of the guys were just golfers that hit it long, who liked to drink and go to the 19th hole. No one went to the driving range after a tournament back in those days. And so when Jason showed up and his work ethic, his commitment, his incredible professionalism on all levels. All levels. Zubak was such a professional, and you know how hot and sweaty you get in long drive because all the energy, right? Yeah. He would have like 5 shirts, that he would bring to a competition. He'd be changing shirts between rounds because he wanted to keep his clean look.
Wow.
That was Zubak. He was a perfectionist on every level, and he took all of the guys in the sport who were serious with long drive at the time. I wasn't. I just kind of went and have fun. I was out at a party, have a good time. But, Pavlik, Pfister, Jerry James, and all these guys, he made them raise their level, because he was so good. And I tell you what, we talk about it. I've talked about it before, but, Sean Pfister would not have the number of championships he has if it wasn't for Jason Zubak. Because Sean loved to party and have a good time, and he could have gotten caught up into that whole realm. But Jason Zubak, Sean was so super competitive. He couldn't stand having anybody beat him, right? Really upset him, right? And that is why Sean Pfister ended up winning 3 titles, because he got pushed by Jason Zubak.
So let me jump back. What were you doing before long drive?
Yeah, no, what happened was I grew up playing golf. I was a good junior player in Alabama, and I did pretty good in the junior field. I got a college scholarship to the best Division II school in the country. And I played 1 year at the best junior college. I was a black sheep of the family. I was wild and crazy, and I had a lot of fun at an early age. And I was, decent athlete, good high school athlete.
Where was it that you grew up?
Alabama.
Yeah,
a little town called Brundage outside of Troy, Alabama. But anyway, what happened was I ended up, I was really small. 16, I was 5'4", 116 pounds, my first driver's license. And then I sprouted. But when I was really tiny in those junior golf, I was as long as all the big hitting kids. And then when I got size, then it just blew up. It was just a joke. I just kept getting longer and longer and longer all the way through college. I was hitting it just back then I was 130 5-mile-an-hour clubhead speed with a steel shafted persimmon driver and a balata ball. I would not one drive would knock it out of the round. And it was awful. But at the same time, I came from a golfing background and a sports background, but golfing, right? And I was so much longer than everybody I played with. Well, I saw a guy in my church in Mobley, Alabama, Hamp Andrews, he was participating in the National Long Drive Championship. He was, from the 70s and on up. Hamp's about 10 years older than me. And I beat him in the church charity golf tournament by 30 yards, right? Boy. And Hamp had never had anybody come close to him, right? And I blew it 30 yards by him. And so the next thing you know, he goes, hey, we're doing this qualifier in Destin, Florida. So I show up and you got 3 balls for $5. I had $10. And I got 6 balls, and I had a Ben Hogan speed slot forward that I actually was my driving club in college because I played, a bit of a sweeping hook, but that was my go-to club. I want to hit a big drive on a hole, 300 plus, and my driver was erratic. So I hit my Ben Hogan speed slot forward, right, with a S500 shaft, and I hit it in Sandestin, Florida, 340 yards. And I took the lead in the qualifier that Hamp was hitting in, right, with a forward. And then I hit that 2 balls, and I put that down and picked up my driver. First ball with the driver, I hit like 320 or something like that. And Joe Simpson was an old long drive guy, back in the day. Goes, hey kid, stop wasting our time. Hit your forward again. And then I hit driver. I 2-hopped it into a bush at 356, and I ended up winning the event by almost 20 yards. And
nice.
And I also, funny was, I knocked Joe out. But that was how I got started. But I was always just a golfer. That's all it was.
Yeah.
I was excessively long.
So after that, did you go back into tournament golf?
You know what? Back in those days, you did the one qualifier, the one regional, and if you made it, you made it. You didn't, you didn't. And then we figured out you could do multiples, and we started doing that. But long drive was just a way in those days in the 90s for me to supplement. I'd been divorced, I had an alimony and child support I had to pay. And so what I had to do was I had all these bills. The long drive was just a way to pay for those bills and help me pay entry fees. No, I was always a golfer. That was always my heart. I wanted to be on the PGA Tour. That was my dream. But with, 18 yards between irons, it made it really hard to score.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of the really weird things about, I guess there are like Bubba Watson, maybe. He's got, really bizarre gaps and he could hit a 9-iron 50 yards, difference if he's depending on what he's doing. But
absolutely,
it's kind of the same with us. Like you don't have a 175 shot is not just like, oh, that's, a full 8-iron or whatever. Like we play it so differently than a normal golfer that it's got advantages. If we're hitting a drive out there 375 or whatever it may be on the course, that's an advantage, but it also comes with problems.
Yes, it does. It has its challenges. You've got to have a hell of an imagination to be very creative if you're going to be a golfer that hits as long as we do and play on a successful level.
And then also for the wedges too.
My word.
Because, maybe a normal golfer would have what do you think, like a 10-yard gap on their wedges? They go lob,
not
sand,
even that, yeah. And most 10 yards, yeah.
I've never played that way. I have a 60 degree that I'll hit around greens and stuff, but then I go a 56 degree and a 50 degree, and those are each 40 yards difference.
It's ridiculous. And the crazy thing is you can make really good quality swings and then it'll just go 20 extra yards. I used to do that from the middle of the fairway all the time. It used to drive me nuts, Be having a great round going, in the flow, growing, 3, 4, 5 under, whatever, and then all of a sudden it blow it over a green 20 yards, make double bogey and just completely change the momentum of the round.
So again, like,
excuse me for a second. I want to tell you real quick about my favorite training aid and a sponsor of the podcast, the Lag Shot. It's designed with what they call lag flex technology that'll help you to create and maintain more lag in your swing, which will give you better consistency and more speed, which we all want, right? But my favorite part is that you can go out and actually hit balls with it. It's a real club. They make a driver, a 7-iron, and a wedge. So you can incorporate it into your practice sessions to ingrain the better technique that it's teaching you. Once you try it, you'll see why I love it. Go to lagshotgolf.com/crush or click the link in the description below to get 15% off. lagshotgolf.com/crush.
Pros and cons. There's maybe nothing more frustrating than just bombing a drive on a par 5 and you have a wedge in. You're like, I'm going to eagle this thing or better. And you end up maybe with a birdie, probably par.
Probably par,
maybe some, That's just so frustrating. And
because you hit it, you short side yourself.
Yeah. But you've hit it so far. You're like, I've just done 2/3 of this hole. I really should take advantage of this. And those little shots, they can be frustrating. Although, like we were just saying, if you have that big of gaps, it actually requires better feel. Because you've got to know, okay, well, that's a 40-yard difference here. Maybe cut it, maybe low, maybe high, whatever. And you have to play a lot by feel.
Well, I tell you, that's what amazes me when I watch Bryson DeChambeau play now. And it kind of, it really helped me understand what I was doing wrong back in my day. You know, when I look at the technical aspect and the way he does things, it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with his success.
Yeah, the whole philosophy of using the clock face to determine how far he's going to hit the ball, how he's going to fly it, I just think is genius. I never would have thought of that.
But then you also, just to make a counter argument to that, you could have, if you tried to have someone like Bubba Watson do that method, I don't think it would work for him.
I couldn't do it. No.
So if you have to match it up to the person. If Bryson tried to play like Bubba, he'd probably have a hard time, and if Bubba tried to play like Bryson, he'd have a hard time.
Yeah. I think either one of them could do the other way. You know, no way at all.
But you think the clock method and the technical part would have worked for you?
I think I would have understood that better. I was a field player for, in a lot of ways. I mean, I came up with a grip method, short, mid, and long grip, full grip for my to help take 5 yards off my iron shots, especially the 6 iron on down, and that did help a lot. It helped to fill in some of those gaps, because then I can make the same feeling swing. Yeah. But by having a shorter shaft, it allowed a little less setting of the club face of the club. The lag set thing that we actually have in long drive is so bad, especially for guys like me and Bubba and those guys. Bryson doesn't seem to have it. But Daly has a big lag set, So for the old school guys, we had a lot of lag, and that was where a lot of distance came from. So by doing the grip method, changing the length of the grip, the club, then that allowed me to take 5 yards off, and that helped a lot. But at the same time, the equipment itself wasn't capable of me making a swing at what would really be a comfortable speed. I had to tone it way down.
Yeah. And that's really weird, because when you get to slowing things down, it's harder to predict. Oh, am I going to slow down my hips? Am I going to slow down my arms? Exactly. And that makes a completely different shot shape. But if you can just go at like what is a pretty natural full speed, it's quite consistent. Anytime you slow things down, it becomes a little bit of a guessing game.
It definitely can be. That was the key with the grip situation that I developed that really helped me. And I had some old guys, some old pros, old PGA Tour pros show that to me. Sammy Rachel's a great friend of mine. He was a journeyman pro from like 74 to 84. But he used to help me. He taught me how to play better tournament golf. And the philosophy that we used was par is your friend. Because every golf course you tee it up on is a par 68, 69 at the most. You don't play par fives. Stop trying to birdie all the holes. Shoot even par. You shoot 68, 69, 4 rounds in a row, 12 under. How well are you going to do? He goes, there's going to be those days when you're going to hit some shots close. You're going to make a few extra putts. The next thing you know, you're 15, 18, 20 under. He goes, you'll be winning a lot of tournaments doing that. That's
one thing. One of the comments that I'm sure probably everybody listening heard when Bryson said that Augusta is basically a par 68. And then I think he may have rescinded his comment, but I mean, that's pretty accurate. If you're hitting short irons into a par 5, it's no longer a par 5. No. So yeah, it's still an extremely difficult and amazing course. But if you're hitting at a certain distance, it becomes a par 68.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's true probably for every course out on the PGA Tour. So when I was growing up, learning how to play golf, my kind of mindset was that you should be like, I'm talking about when I was like really young, like learning how to play golf, that it just seems like conceptually you should be hitting like 5 irons into par 4s, and like maybe if it's a long one, a 4 iron into a par 4, maybe even a 3 iron, something like that. I can't tell you the last time I ever did that. Unless maybe I hit like an 8 iron off the tee and then a 5 iron into the green for some stupid reason, but that's just not how golf is played anymore. So it's either the equipment or the courses or combination, the players, something like that. But yeah, golf becomes very short for the long hitters.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, and as like you said, you mentioned something really interesting. It's not played like I just described anymore. Now it's you fire the flag, you try to knock it out of the hole, and that is so aggressive. But I still think as far as long hitters go, there is a certain level of picking your opportunities, because the one major problem with a massive club head speed is the other shot. That's when 2 strokes or penalty strokes come into play.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to avoid, because you can take a very smooth, easy swing that feels great, but you've got an extra 7-8 miles an hour on it. And the next thing you know, you're hitting it 15 yards too long. And I'm sorry, the golf course designers, they design these holes, they stop usually at the back of the green. They don't, anything over the green is not good. Yeah. And you got to kind of keep the ball between you and the hole. That's kind of a pretty simple strategy, and picking your points to attack and use your advantage, and patience. Patience is a really, really hard thing when you have the ability to hit the shots that we do, because not everyone has that. Very, very few people can hit the shots that we can hit.
Yeah. And then I remember playing a junior tournament or some amateur tournament against this guy who had been playing Chicago golf forever. Like, he was a legend, and he had this really cool stinger shot that was almost like his natural ball flight, is a super low little draw. And I never had that shot growing up. I always hit it high and far. And it took me a long time to learn how to flight it like that. And I would have done so much better in so many tournaments if I had that, because we're hitting maybe a 4-iron off the tee on a par 4 a lot of times. Yeah. And a 4-iron can still go really high. And if you're on an elevated tee, hitting a 4-iron, any bit of wind in there, it can change things really quickly. So that stinger shot is big too.
Huge. I used to be so good at that stinger shot. I love that, man.
I wish you had taught me earlier.
Tiger made it famous, but we were hitting that damn thing back in the 80s, man. I learned that in college, you know. That's a cool shot to have, man. That little abbreviated, 3/4 follow through, man. That is fun. You just let those hands, soft hands, and you just kind of drag the handle of the club through impact. And
well, it's probably a lot easier now with the balls that we have and the equipment where it's not going to be spinning up like that.
Exactly.
I mean, thankfully, I never really played with any of the wound balls or anything, but I'm sure they were just like throwing a little frisbee or a boomerang or something.
Oh, no, they had rubber bands, dude. You'd break them.
Oh,
I broke them all the time. I would hit a ball good, and into the shadow would break rubber bands inside the ball. That's no good. I had to take it out and play the next hole, and it looked fine. I mean, because back then, the only way you take a ball out of play, you had to show to your competitors, you go, I'm going to take the ball out of play. It's damaged. They look at it. No, it's not. Because back, if you miss a ball back then, you put like a smiley face or cut on it, a warp in the cover. No. And I'm like, no, it's not round. Trust me.
It's actually the inside that's busted. Yeah, but they probably never experienced that.
They had no idea what I was talking
about.
Right.
Yeah. That's got to be weird. It's like today when you break a face on a driver, most people never experience that. So you're like, look, there's a little crack right there. I flattened it out. And they're like, what? Yeah. How do you, what do you mean?
I know it.
But it happens.
I tell you what, back in the 20 years ago, I was the only lawn driver that hit stock lofts. I mean, stuff they sold over the shelf. I mean, 7.5 was, you could buy a 7.5 driver back then. And I was hitting 8.5, 9s. And so that made me, quite attractive to the OEMs, because I was the only one that could do it. But they were more concerned about me breaking a face. Yeah. If a driver head broke and I was competing and people saw that, it made them look bad.
Sure. Yeah, because people just don't know. I think hopefully now there's maybe more people are understanding in long drive. We break stuff. That's just what happens. But
they're doing it more on tour, so that's helping. That's helping soften that impact. Everybody's okay. It happens.
So speaking of your equipment, let's not give like a recap of the event. People can go check out the YouTube. It was an exciting event. But tell us, yesterday you took second in the senior division. So what equipment were you using? It was a little downwind, so you're telling me you wanted some more spin on it.
Yeah.
What was your process?
Yeah, yesterday was real similar to what we had in at the first event in Mesquite. Except yesterday it was straight downwind, a direct direct wind out of the east, which was actually more helpful for me because I kind of hit a tight draw, and I could raise that high tight draw and just work with that. So I did the similar stuff that I did in Mesquite. I just jumped my loft up from a 6.5 to probably, I actually got all the way up to 9.5 yesterday. I went to maximum because I hit 7.5 cranks. The F11 Pro. That's the hit driver I hit all last year, and I won all those events with, and those 2 world titles with the other tour. And that particular head has been really good. I like it, and I can adjust it to fit conditions pretty good. So that's helpful. And the fact then I don't have to change my swing anyway. I can still go ahead and use my comfortable, swing where I naturally just release the club.
What shafts do you put in there?
I've got right now. I've got an Alpha Platinum shaft. Really interesting shaft. It's only about $90. That's $100. I've liked it really good. I've turned a lot of guys onto it. They seem to like it, but it's 45 and I got a 45 and a 55 gram shaft.
Are they pretty soft?
Yeah, they're really soft.
Do you know the frequency?
I'm running my freak on some of them. I've got them as low as 205, 204, 205. I don't have anything under 200 CPMs. And then I've got, and the highest ones I have are about 216, 218.
Now you were one of the first people to back in the day be using softer shafts, right?
I was, Bobby Peterson here, that runs the tour now. Bobby was using really soft shafts, but Bobby wasn't that competitive. He was using, the stuff back then wasn't good enough to handle higher club head speeds, and quality ball strikes. One of the things, the soft shafts back then, I tried several of them, but when I'm a heavy hitter of the golf ball, I make very, very solid contact. And one of the things about soft shafts back then, when you hit it solid, the shaft would literally collapse, and it would literally feel like it was going to break.
Oh wow!
You'd feel the torque just go off the charts. It's the worst feeling thing ever, right? So I tried a lot of that stuff, and I did have back then the belief was very similar to thinking along fast swings. You want stiffer shafts. Well, everybody was wanting to put you in a 280, 290, 300 plus. We had guys hitting 320 CPM shaft. It was crazy, like quadruple X or stuff. Yeah. But I found out my play driver while I was the major manufacturers I had worked with back then, were all fitting me right at the 280 for my play driver at 44, 45 inches. A long driver at 48 plus, no, that needed to be soft. Because I could not get it around, and I dropped all the way down from the 280 to low 230s. I was very soft. I was the first guy of the top guys in the sport that hit under 240. Slepsky was another one that did under 240, I think, and he was the only other guy that could really hit something really soft.
And then obviously we've seen a big comeback with that recently with Patterson making really soft shafts.
Their double kick I hear. I didn't like the Pattersons very much when I hit them. I talked a lot with Jason, 6-7 years ago when he got in sport. I think it was 14 and everything. And they were okay. They just didn't feel good to me. But that was the early ones. And then I think when I think it was Eddie Fernandez. I didn't even know it. Eddie went around back in my heyday. He didn't show up until, right when I walked away at 13. So I had no idea who Eddie Fernandez was. And I kept hearing about this guy, Eddie Fernandez. He's a good player, got a good golf swing and all that stuff. Like, no kidding. Where the hell's he been all these years? Because he's only 5 years younger than me or something like that, 5 or 6. So he started hitting it. I said, well, they must have made some real improvements on it because, he's a good golfer and got a golf swing. He likes it. And I know that when you're that skilled, you're going to hit what's the best for you. So it's obviously a very good shaft.
Yeah, they make really good ones. I was today going back and forth between one that I think was about 270 CPM and then down to right about 200, just kind of depending on what I was feeling for that set. But I think both of those are the double kick point. I have one in my bag. I haven't hit it much, but it's a single kick point. So it probably feels a lot more like what you're used to.
Could be.
But they're good.
Could be. What's the gram weight on those?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how much into the numbers I really want to get. Like I never had a TrackMan or anything growing up. I have a bachelor's in math. Like I appreciate data and statistics and everything, but I've always been more of a field player. And if I start thinking about numbers, I get just like locked up. It becomes too mathematical.
I've done that recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got one of the new Foresight GC3s. I got the Bushnell version. And I've been working on stuff over the winter. Justin James, they gave me some advice. Kylie gave me some advice. So I'm working on getting my speed up because I want to get 140. That's my number. So I've been doing all these different little tweaks to my training, and I don't do any serious training. I do, mobility and and, plyometric type stuff, I don't even know what to call it, but I just got these things that I feel that would help me. And that's what I do. So anyway, I get this damn Bushnell, and sure enough, right out of the gate, I go 140. I'm like, yeah, I'm all excited. And then the next day at 141 twice. Yeah. 2 days later, I can't get over 132, 33 because I haven't gotten locked into chasing numbers, right? I've completely stopped feeling my golf swing and doing what I know works and focusing on that. And I'm chasing numbers and I'm swinging out of my shoes. I'm giving it, I'm not getting anything. I'm getting so frustrated. This thing don't work right, man. What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Then finally I figured out that, I had gotten away from the very basics that make me successful. And that is, the setup and the feel of my swing. I have a very, very fortunate that I have this unique ability to know these very finite adjustments and positions in my swing. When they're right, the numbers are 5 to 7 miles an hour faster,
Yeah, it's like some people, we've seen a lot of the really good hitters always have their launch monitor up there with them. They're always looking at the data. And I guess if that's how you train and that's what you're used to, I guess it's a help. But like to your point there, I wouldn't really even want to know in competition. I would so my strategy today was basically to kind of start with like a golf shot and just kind of slowly ramp it up on each shot. And it worked fairly well. I mean, I guess I took 9th. But yeah, I mean, how do you know when to switch from a golf swing to a long drive swing and what exactly should be the difference? It's different for everybody, I guess.
Well, yes and no. I know maybe I'm starting to believe a little differently. I know Kyle and Justin have really got me convinced, that this information, because that's the biggest key back in the day that helped me be successful was information. Back when we did not have the time clock, you could hit a good ball and get them to give you information from the grid. I mean, I used to ask them, where'd that land? How far did it roll? Things like that, and I would find these hot lanes and then I would find the best spot to land it. And that's what I would do. I'd wear that out.
Yeah.
I just hit the same shot all the time. And then when we went to the short time clock, my career just took a nosedive and started to struggle and dropped way back into the pack, I thought. I mean, I was still number 1 in the world, but my quality went way down because I couldn't make those adjustments. Well, after talking with Kyle and after talking with Justin, I'm kind of understanding that I need to figure out how to factor that into my competition because that gives me the information that I used to get to adjust. And I thought today, and if you watch them closely, and that's why those two are the best 2 in the world, they make those adjustments. They are like today, while Kyle was, he was just outstanding all day. Justin seemed a little bit off, a little short early, but then he figured it out. And when he was in the TrackMan slot over here in round 4, Robbie, you remember that when he was in the TrackMan slot over here, Bobby and I are seeing his launch monitors, and that was exactly what Bobby and I thought. His launch was a touch low and his spin rate was a touch low. Well, he upped both of those numbers, and the next thing you know, then he's back out there where Kyle was supposed to be. But, he was, 15, 20 yards behind, those guys, Kyle and, who was the other one? Greg Nall and those guys. I mean, he was behind them there for a little while because he wasn't spinning it right. Like I told you, I mean, you hit it beautifully in that one round. When you got through the 16, I thought, and I was standing behind you, that's perfect. But it would have been great in Mesquite, not here.
Yeah, I started off by hitting a little draw today. I prefer to hit a little draw, but I could see it was just falling out of the air. And I had one called back that I actually hit good at like 349. And I was like, well, I got to make some changes here. So then I started hitting a little cut, just to try to put more spin on it, added a little more loft to it. And I mean, there were good changes, but usually I'm practicing into the wind. My range where I practice at home is into the wind. So I don't want to hit that. And then you come out here and you got to make some equipment changes that you never would do into it.
I got to give a quick shout out to Stony Brook Golf Club, one of the best public golf courses in Southwest Florida. They have an aqua range, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's tough for me because I made my living off of bouncing, controlling the bounce. And I'll tell you that story shortly, how I learned to do it and why I did. But like Stony Brook, man, I'm out there and the wind is always, the range faces south. and the wind is always out of the southeast. It's so aggravating.
Well,
because I'm always left or right in the wind. It's like the worst wind you can practice in. You know, as a golfer, worst wind you can practice as a right-handed golfer is left or right. It is left to right in my face all the time.
But then when you leave that, everything else does seem a little easier.
It does. It does.
It's annoying, but it kind of helps.
Yeah. Here's my advice. I give you some great advice, Steve, and take this for what it's worth, but I think it'd really help you because you sound so much like me, and you're just your conceptual understanding of what you're doing. I figured this out when I told you that little story about me chasing numbers. Now here's what I do with my launch monitor. I'll go and hit, and I'll start hitting it the way I want to hit it, the way it's supposed to be hit, right? Then I'll put the launch monitor down. But I was hitting it like crap, a week ago, right? I had it with me, and I didn't turn it on like 3 days in a row until I got it back the way I wanted it, and it felt right to me. And then the day before I came over here, I set it up, and I was in that mid 30, 36, 37. I'm like, okay, good. Because before that, I was struggling to get 131 to 132 and wearing myself out, and I was getting pissed off because I was putting so much effort into it, and I dropped 10 miles an hour, man. I'm like, no, if anything, and I thought about bringing it out. I was going to bring it out today, but today was for the open division. Yesterday I didn't bring it out because of the rain. We weren't sure, and I didn't want to have the hassle of having to worry about it. But today I was going to bring it out, but when I got here, man, this impingement in my left shoulder, left arm going dead, I didn't have anything, and I'm like, there's no point, I don't have anything. But that's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to use that launch monitor that way. I'm going to do it my way that I know how to do it, get it how I want it. Then here's the key. And this is what we talked about. You just talked about it today, because it's what I normally do. I go round and round figuring it out, right? Adjusting round and round. Nope. I can do the launch monitor now. I can do it in the range. I can get it the way I want it, and then come back to the grid and hit it better. Because one of the things that irritated me yesterday more than anything, and I was thrilled that Zach Adams won, right?
Yeah.
I was so happy for him. I know how hard he won, how much he wanted. But what really pissed me off was he won every category too. Like most balls in the grid, longest set, longest ball. That was what I was supposed to be doing. That's what I should be doing. I should be winning everything, right? I'm like, that pisses me off. He's a better ball striker than me now, so I got work to do. And I'm using launch monitor to do it.
Well, I like a lot of what you said, where the more effort doesn't equate to a better swing. And so we did a podcast up in North Carolina from here, with a really interesting group of guys that do like all sorts of studies on how to swing faster, how to train to swing faster across different demographics. And they found for me that I move heavy weights really well, but I move light weights like average. So I'm training that, trying to get better. But to that point, if I get up there and I try to put more effort into the swing, it's like, I could go lift 500 or 600 pounds. Like that's the kind of effort I'm putting into it, but it doesn't equate to faster club head speed. So it almost feels to me like I'm swinging faster when I'm swinging slower, and the sequencing is right or whatever it is, but the head just whips through. And like today, my main thought was essentially to take more time on the backswing. And if I ever rushed it by like picking it up quick, it would be totally counterproductive.
I love that, because I've said it for years. The bigger the ball, the slower the backswing.
Yeah.
I've said it for years. As a golfer, and you're a golfer, and you understand that, the bigger the ball, the slower the backswing. Even with Kyle's and Justin and those guys, massive speeds, the guys who go 150 plus. If you while their tempo is faster than what you and I are comfortable with, and everything, what the average person could really feel, proportionally, the backswing to their 155, 60 mile an hour club head speed, proportionally, it's similar. Their backswing, even though it looks a lot faster than what you would think, it's not as fast compared to what their through swing is. And that there's a balance in there, a rhythm, a balance. And I'm telling you, it's all about your muscle twitch firing. I figured this out. There's a match of that sequencing there's got to be a balance to it, a ratio balance. If you can have that, the best way Great. Anthony, great venue. Anthony Livingston, everybody. You know, we don't have him on camera. Great job, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent work. All right, so Terry, now you are so right. It is about the sequencing. And look at it like this. This is the way I've always looked at my golf swing. When you look at art, when I learned how to play golf, you learn how to visualize your shot. And it was you were trying to paint a picture. You had a visualization of this curvature and shot the way you wanted to hit it, whether it's a cut, whatever, high, low, draw, whatever, you know, sometimes you had to hook it, you know, or slice it, you know, but you had a visual, you were, the phrase that I remember hearing, from, the guy I learned it from was, when I'd hit it right, he'd go Picasso, you know, because you just hit a beautiful golf shot. You were an artist, right? So I looked at, my power and ability to hit a ball long, exceptionally long. I noticed that if I had the right sequencing and flow to my body, then it was like art. It had a flow. It looked effortless. It was smooth and fluid. And it just had this climax at the ball that was so sudden, you know? And that was kind of the way I looked at it. It was kind of like ballet. In ballet, they, if you've ever watched any film on ballet, these dancers, they go out there and they practice each individual move over and over, just relentlessly practice so they get it just so perfect, right? And then when they do the performance, they have put it all together.
Yeah.
And it has this like beautiful, you know, rhythm and flow to it. And it's such a deep experience. And so I kind of look at my preparation in my long drive, any golf too, you know, as more of an art form. And it has to have a fluid flow to it.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because there are a lot of guys that look like they're doing the opposite. There are guys that are just like jacked, full of muscle, and they come up and it's very much a power move for them. And for a lot of them, it works. But like I was just telling you, that doesn't work for me. I'm strong, but when I try to convert that into the golf club, it doesn't work. And I do better when I'm, like you're saying, making it more of an art form than anything else. And that's one of the cool things that I've always appreciated, although on my bad days hated about golf, is how deep in your own mind you can get. If you go out for a few hours and you're hitting golf balls and you're just practicing by yourself, you're exploring your mind in ways that I've never, you know, in any meditation, yoga, whatever, I've never been able to get quite as deep into my own thoughts and who I am as to when I'm practicing. And it does become an art form, and a really cool art form at that, because it's both internal and then you get to enjoy the rewards.
It is, Stephen, and it's being self-aware. I had this really rough stretch. I had PTSD my entire life and didn't even realize it, right? To 2013, I've been struggling starting about 04, 05. I started to really struggle with depression and other things. And I went on medication, and I was going on antidepressants. Well, the doctors, we were talking about doctors a while ago, you know, they were symptomatically treating the problem. No one had diagnosed me with PTSD from a heavily abusive, physically, verbally, on all levels, childhood, right? And then by growing up in the South, in Southern Baptist, and the fire and brimstone and hell and damnation, all the things I was going through quickly converted to it was my fault. So I spent my entire life living with shame, you know, and regret. And when I finally got diagnosed with PTSD in 13, the doctor was treating me symptomatically for bipolar 2, ADHD, manic depressive. I was on 5 different medications, right? So I went down this really dark tunnel and had like multiple suicide attempts and quit long drive. You know, I couldn't do anything. You know, I couldn't function at all. And when I finally got out of that and I re-diagnosed myself, and we started treating the PTSD, right? And we managed to fix that. All of a sudden now, this whole self-awareness and mindfulness thing, a journey that I'm on, it has changed the course of my life. And what's happened is allowed me to be creative, be in the moment, right? And I have spent the last year, and the way I did it, interesting thing, this is a great credit to long drive competition right here, about competition period. Here's what I did. I remember being in the zone there multiple times, playing golf, shooting 59, 60, 61, having these incredible rounds, had tournament rounds at 61, 63, you know, back on the Hooters Tour, stuff like that, right? And would have these zone, I've had zone experiences in long drive where I would hit all day long, 7, 8, 10 rounds. I might miss the grid 3 or 4 times, you know, the whole day. And every ball was like, every round was longer. The longest ball was the last one I hit in the grid. Every round, I do it all the time. So I had these great zone experiences. So when I was recovering and trying to get over the PTSD, and my therapist, we were talking about all these mindfulness and self-awareness things, and it resonated with me about being in the moment, like the zone is, right? I spent last year practicing zone theory. It changed my life. Now I am actually, the coolest thing now, I'm actually applying those same thoughts and principles to my everyday life. And so you were talking about a while ago about getting into that place in your practice that you were never able to quite do with yoga and meditation. There's some stuff that I've learned, and what I do now is in my preparation, the reason I've been so dominant since I've been back last year and this year is because I build neural pathways constantly. There's no such thing as muscle memory. So that eliminated that false feel that I used to struggle with. I always had those days, you know, when I felt it, and then those days where I couldn't find it. And the days when I couldn't find it, it was terrible, miserable. I hated it. And then I would spiral and have a terrible round. I'd blow up, shoot at 80 or whatever, right? And the days when I was in that zone, in that flow, I would shoot those low numbers, and it was easy. Remember,
it's the same deal.
Good golf is so easy, isn't it? Right? Good golf.
It can be the easiest thing in the world, and then the hardest. And
it's like Charlie at the Masters last week, you know, tweeting out, you know, well, I'll see how any pro shoots over par on the golf course. Like, oh my God, kid, wait till you get some stress in life, you know, because all of a sudden, man, your mind can really make it hard. Yeah. But that's so true. And the coolest thing about all this is, now, because I'm focusing on those neural pathways and triggering those, it is allowing me to find this flow. And even on the off days, like, you know, like yesterday, you know, I was almost there. Last week, 2 days, 3 days ago, it was a disaster. I'm like, I need to pull out. This is awful. I got no chance, right? You know, but because of this training and stuff that I've been doing and being aware, I didn't have the flooding of the anxiety, right? I had this awareness to stop and observe what I was going through. And that's how I figured out, you know, that, hey, you know what? You're not doing what you know is successful. You've gotten off track, and I got back on track.
It can be really tough. I mean, well, first, let me go back and just say, I'm really glad, and I'm sure everybody else here is too, that you're doing better now, because you're one of the fan favorites and favorites among the competitors to be out here. So
well, thank you. I love you kids, man. You guys just feeding off of your energy. I just absolutely love it, man.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Amen, Daniel Amen?
Yes.
Okay. He does a lot of neuroplasticity stuff. Yeah.
He's one of the pioneers on CTE.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Brain reserve. He was the first guy to talk about brain reserve. We were talking about that. I have a therapist, and I have 2 therapists that I'd work with. One taught me. I have my normal therapist who's done all this work. We've done all this work together. But we had another lady who I came across a technique to get over the PTSD and deal with it on a all natural level to help me stay off the medication. I was off the medication at the time, but it was called EMDR. Now, EMDR is I can't remember the exact terminology what the letters stand for, but it's kind of it's like a self-hypnotic or a light trance state they put you in. They take you back to the trauma and you relive it. You're going through the whole awfulness of it, right? And during the awfulness, what they do is they take you and they rescue you You take that version of you that you're remembering, and they rescue you. You take that person to the safe place. And I went all the way back to like 7 years old, from 7 all the way up to like 36, and so I rescued that person. I got into a safe place, and then we were able to separate the emotional flood from the memory. So now I can talk about the memory without getting that overwhelming flood. And I learned about this technique from some Navy SEAL friends of mine who were dealing with PTSD from battle.
Wow.
It was fascinating stuff. And what they were doing was they were using these electrical stimulations of the brain, like Dr. Amen talks about. And my therapist who did the EMDR on me told me about Dr. Amen. I did all the research. When I found out about brain reserve, that made total sense to me.
What is brain reserve? I'm not sure if I know that.
Oh, well, watch his film, watch his video. He talks about it. On this website, when you do the presentation video, he talks about brain reserve. And when they discovered it in the CTE studies, and what happened was that they took soldiers who had the same exact injury to their brain from an explosion, from IED or whatever, right? And some would recover and be fine, normal. Others would not. And they would suffer, they would commit suicide, and they were trying to figure out what was going on. He came up with brain reserve because what happened was, going into the situation, some of the guys who had a healthy brain, and functioning properly, they were able to recover. They were able to, respond to the treatments well, and be fine. Where other guys who were going in with PTSD or other damaged brain issues with a lot of gray matter, they could not. And that was what happened to me, because when I suffered the abuse as a childhood, it was intergenerational. My dad had a worse childhood than I could imagine, right? And so he didn't understand. He didn't know any of this stuff. He didn't understand. He was going based on societal, values and stuff. And so he just kind of ended up, being an alcoholic and having all these other issues and never having coping skills, right? Well, that was where I was. I was responding to things as a damaged 10-year-old is what we figured out in therapy, right? So my brain reserve was gone. And when I started doing all these crazy medications that like psychiatrists put me on, it made it worse. I spiraled and went down this horrible place. Well, the next thing you know, when we started to rebuild these things and we got off the damaging psychotropic drugs, we ended up creating white matter and building white matter through natural electrical stimulations. And Dr. Amen's stuff was one of the things I really want to try. It's a little expensive, so I was kind of holding off.
Yeah. The first time I saw him, I think it was like a TED talk, and he was talking about the neuroplasticity, how, your brain might be messed up now, but through his 20,000, I'm sure it's way more now, brain scans that he's done and seen all kinds of conditions, he has found that really you can recover your brain no matter where it is.
Well, check out another neuroscientist, Dr. Kay Tai.
Okay.
She changed the game too on her area. She was one of those people that questioned the status quo. And when they told her, said, well, that's just the way it is, she goes, that's not acceptable. Do you see her TED Talk?
Okay.
Kay, Kaytye. She's out of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, I think, maybe something like that. Fascinating. And you know what it is? All this new neuroscience that we're finding out about now has come about in the last 10 years, mostly the last 5. It's game-changing stuff. You don't have to suffer like I did. People don't have to suffer their lifetimes like I did.
And I'm glad to hear that the thing that's helped you, or the things that have helped you, are not medications. Because that, again, like, I'm certainly no doctor. I would never try to prescribe or unprescribe anyone, but I'm glad to hear when people have success through something other than medication, because there are so many other options.
There really are. And another thing too I learned too was your diet. I went plant-based. And that's what really helped me get off the medication, because my body was able to process all that crap that I've been putting in, but I also wasn't adding to it. All these industrialized meat productions and industrialized food production, they've got all these preservatives and additives and things. They're not good for you.
Yeah. So you and I initially it would sound like we're taking the opposite approach on diet, because I eat at times only meat, and sometimes I'll add in, other things. But the core of what we're doing is we're cutting out the processed crap. Yeah. And like you said, preservatives, additives, things like that. So although you've gone plant-based and I've gone meat-based, it's essentially the same thing. It's an elimination diet, getting rid of the bad things that bother us, and just using pure fuel to make us feel better.
Well, and it's different for each individual because you have to find out. Like for me, I had all this stuff that I had that I didn't know I had, was dealing with, and by putting in all these bad things into my body, it was adding to it and making it worse.
Yeah.
Same like the medication, the psychotropic drugs. Well, that's not going to be the same for everybody. If you do psychotropic drugs, they are proven to be quite helpful, but you need to closely monitor it. There needs to be an end game. My psychiatrist told me I probably have to take them the rest of my life, and I didn't know any different. So I figured, okay, I'm done. I got to do this, right? Well, after a few years of it, I'm thinking I'm just going to be crazy, and I'm going to have Alzheimer's or dementia in a few years, and I'm only in my early 50s. And that wasn't the case. He was old school symptomatic treatment. And he wasn't engaged. In my life, like my therapist is now. She came into with me. We did a form of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy. It's the gold standard for people with the kind of issues I had. It came about 20 years ago. And basically mindfulness is one of the cornerstones, really the foundational stone of the process. But what they do is they teach you how to build a toolbox. It equips you with all these ways, all natural, to cope, to learn to cope. Because when you have PTSD, you're not learning, you don't cope. You haven't had closure with that trauma, so you're not coping properly. And when you build that toolbox, this is the way the Navy SEAL guys described it to me, was because we're going to give you a toolbox and teach you how to use those tools. So no matter what the situation comes up, you're ready for it. And I'm a damn if it didn't work. They're like some of the smartest soldiers around because they're required to do what they're required to do. But I'm gonna tell you what, man, those guys knew their stuff, man.
I've heard some amazing things from veterans on PTSD recovery, and I don't want to ask you specifically unless you want to share, but a lot of them have said that they've had great success using like small doses of psychedelics.
Yes,
I've heard really promising things in that.
Yes, I'm up for trying that some too. And I was at the point I was about ready to try it, then I had a breakthrough with my meditation. But yeah, definitely. One of the things that I understand about using psychedelics is now, because it's a lot like electroshock therapy, right? We all think of the science fiction horror films, right? That's the way we think electroshock. Well, no, they didn't give up on it. They kept modifying it, and now it's they've got it down to such a finely tuned, because of technology, artificial intelligence, and computers and things. Now they can monitor it and specifically target tiny, small regions of the brain to stimulate neuro activity and promote growth.
Yeah.
One of Dr. Amen's technologies was he came up with a device to measure blood flow. So he would he figured out, okay, this area of the brain is dead. No, not getting any blood flow, is dead. And now they have more technology now to help stimulate that, revitalize that, and it's not necessarily dead forever. They can rebuild it. Yeah.
I think I used one of his devices for that. It was kind of like goggles that you put on, and it has lights flashing in different centers, and you're supposed to kind of look in different places. But I think it's for that exact same purpose, to find something that is not like, if you go back to whatever, when I was growing up, or long before that, probably, they were doing like zapping your brain in probably a harmful way for most people. But like you said, now, like, it's even as common as Halo Neurosport, I think it's called. Yeah. They have that little headset that you put on, and it's doing a similar thing, like little electrical signals that are going to specific parts of your brain. And obviously doctors would get more precise on where they're placing the nodes and stuff.
Oh yeah. My wife had to have, she was having seizures, these mild seizures where you kind of like space out, right? And they would last 30 seconds or more, right? So they took her in to a neurosurgeon, and they put this cap on her head and all these little electrodes, right? And they printed out this incredibly cool map of her brain, and like you could go deep into it. You could see all these parts of it, they were just fascinating stuff. But that's what they can do now, and they've discovered now, like with me, for example, on my my PTSD, the very center core, that hollow area of your brain, that tiny area where your was it your amygdala, your hippocampus, and some other organs, right? That are the why center, right? They're the ones that generate hormones and chemicals that create emotions, right? So then there's a loop that things are supposed to regulate, right? Well, I was getting stimulated into my fight or flight mode, right? And then the regulatory step next was being bypassed because of the PTSD. So when it would bypass, your brain doesn't stop the loop. It just goes, it does a go around. So then it starts going through another area of the brain that processes a different way. And so what ended up happening was everything would get kind of screwed up. And my coping mechanism was that of a damaged 10-year-old boy, emotionally damaged 10-year-old boy. And so I would have these kind of flooding and responses like a child would have.
Yeah.
And so once we got that area figured out and working properly, all of that went away.
Where would you say you are in your process now?
Oh, I asked my therapist today, I'm healed, aren't I? And she goes, I would never say anybody's, healed, but she goes, honey, you're as good as I know, because I am in a space. I say, this is what I describe right now. I say I was mentally ill. Now I'm mentally well, and I'm on my way to mental wealth because I am understanding more and more and more about how to build neural pathways now on a level using my athletics and my competition that people just get when I describe it to them.
It's so big for competition. I was talking with Kyle earlier and other people have mentioned, visualization and stuff like that. But the fight or flight response that you brought up earlier today, I lost my first set of the day. I got put into the losers bracket, and it was right away. It was all right. I have to win 4 times now in a row or I'm knocked out. And thankfully I've had enough of these experiences where I was able to have that fight response, and I won a bunch of times and advanced. But those neural pathways, developing the reaction, the appropriate reaction where you're thinking about it right and you're able to kind of take on the challenge is huge for sport. And all of this stuff with mental, being mentally well and having mental wealth and all of that, that's maybe the most underrated portion of any performance, right?
On any level, any part of life. Any part of life. Yeah. Processing things properly. I figured out, my therapist helped me realize that it goes from being reactive to choosing to be responsive. And one of the coolest things about being mindful and learning how to meditate, now I can sit with my pain. I feel it and it hurts, but I can sit with it and observe it and not react to it.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing about that is it allows me to learn from it and understand now that, hey, when I'm feeling those emotions and that flooding, it's time I need to pay immediate attention. It's time for me to take a moment to myself and shut down and pay attention to it and respond.
Yeah, well, that's going to happen. I mean, people know that you're going to have some sort of a challenge, some sort of a trigger, something that does present a problem for you, whether it's today or next week or whatever. And now it sounds like you've got, and I mean, I want to work on it. I hope everybody is willing to work on it, but you got to have the right response, right? That it. You got to learn how to do that. It's not something that you're naturally going to have. Well,
you actually can.
All right.
And here's what I say. I've always believed, even through all the trauma and the stuff that I went through, I've always believed that the good in people, right? And when we practice mindfulness, mindfulness is all about the benefit of others and living your life for the betterment of your environment and the people you're around and your ecosystem, basically. The balance, right? So if you do that, if you learn to live your life for the benefit of everyone, what you find is the best place to start is with yourself, and being self-aware and showing myself empathy, compassion, loving kindness is a big phrase, by being able to do that with myself when I'm having these crisis moments and not doing the fire brimstone, you're going to hell, you're a bad person, that kind of stuff that I used to do. It allows me now to connect with people. There's a great video, a little short 3-minute video, I think it is, by one of the rock stars in psychotherapy now called Brene Brown. I always get emotional when I talk about it, but it's really incredible. It moved my life. It was about vulnerability and shame. And so I watched those 2 videos and I shared it on my social media, and I got, the usual response, but I got a lot of great support. But then I came across another video, a little like explanation of the difference between sympathy and empathy. I never knew there was a difference. I literally thought they were the same damn thing, and they could not be more different. And if anybody watching the podcast, watch the video about sympathy and empathy, and it will change the relationships you have with everybody you care about in your life, friends, family, loved ones, you name it. You will see everything in a different light, because what my therapist did with me that no other therapist that I had, 5 or 6 of them before that, first thing she said to me, she said, "You're in a deep, dark hole." She goes, "I'm going to climb down in there with you, and we're going to sit together till you figure it out." And the first 3 or 4 sessions, that's literally what we did. We didn't talk a whole lot. And I'm like begging, I'm like wanting her to say something. I'm looking at her, "What do you think?" "I don't know. What do you think? How you feeling?" Well, because she taught me how to help myself, then the healing began. I know you're a Christian and I was a Christian, but I think a lot of the appeal of Christianity is the mindfulness parts of it. When they formed Christianity, when Constantine formed the put the Council of Nicaea together and made them come up with the whole New Testament and the books and all, when you look at all of the teachings in Christianity, there's a lot of mindfulness in there. And there's one particular saying, and he used it, talking, I think it was about Peter, being the fisherman. He goes, you can give a man a fish and feed him for a day. You can teach him to fish and feed him for life. Yeah. And that is so true, because that is what I learned to do, and now, it's allowing me to have the healing properly and the growth, the fertile growth that lies within failure. You learn so much more in failure in life than you ever will in success. Yeah. And now that I have all those what were once terrible experiences, now they've turned to fertile ground, because I can sit with them, I can embrace them, and I'm okay with them. They don't send me off the edge, into those deep, dark places where I'm reacting reacting like an asshole and being a jerk, and burning bridges and friendships right and left, and it's just been absolutely incredible. And I wish everybody could find that experience in their own lives, because it is a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
It's a shame that there's not an easier way to get there, because you have to go through those dark times and the big challenges. But then, like you said, they're the most rewarding, and they form who you are. It's like in a book. If you're reading like Lord of the Rings or something, I think actually Bilbo might have even said it in one of them. He's like, "This was my darkest moment, so later it became the best story."
All right,
we out of time. Go. All right. Before we wrap this up, I would be bummed out if I didn't bring up what probably everybody, a lot of people I certainly think of when I think of you in Long Drive. You probably know what I'm going to say. You ain't running. Tell us about that.
All right, here's how it goes. My first Long Drive professional event was an Old World Power Golf event in Destin, Florida, and Mike Gordon, I met him for the first time. He was a Yonex captain of the team. Everybody was all hitting it about the same way. I was hitting that Tony Pennant driver with the World Power Golf shaft, and I'm trying to get Mike to let me have a Yonex driver, because I had a Yonex driver. I hit it, and I hit it really good, and I hit it really long. Well, Mike wasn't working with me or anything. He goes, "Look," he goes, "we're all fought about the same." He goes, "One thing you got to remember, whoever gets the best bounce wins." And ever since then, that resonated with me, right? So as the years went by and I worked with different manufacturers, first was Bridgestone. I was the only guy with 130-mile-an-hour club head speed. I helped them develop, the core technology that changed golf in the late 90s, early 2000s with the lady ball and all that. I did a lot of in-house testing. They taught me about launch ball dynamics, right? And then I went with Ping in 99 for a little while. And Mustafa was a head engineer back then. And I sat with him and watched Sean Fisher and Brian Pavitt, dominate the launch monitor. I got like 20 minutes of hitting time on the launch monitor, but it was the best day of my life because Mustafa showed me about launch angle and club, blah, 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 all the information about that. And so I began to piece all these things together. And when I committed to long drive in 02 and I was going to do that, that was going to be my, I was going to walk away from playing full time, focus on long drive. I was all about controlling the hop. And I knew I was perfect landing angle was 35 to 38 degrees. And when I hit it and I hit that spot, I knew that ball was supposed to go 50, 60 yards on a roll. And you look at all the videos that's available out there, you hear me yelling stuff like that right at impact, right as the ball's coming off the face, I'm screaming, and it's always good because of that feel thing. But that is exactly right. You ain't running was I know it's going to run. Yeah. And if it's stopping short of 50, it ain't run.
And was that the winning shot?
Of course it was.
There you go.
Of course it was.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, David, thanks so much for doing this and for being so, open and honest. And
oh, sure.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah, that's the way I live my life now, man. Anytime I can help anybody with their mental health, or just be a good ear. My mother told me as a kid to get me to stop being so hyper and listen. She goes, son, you got those big ears for a reason. And I do have a really, really big ears. So. My nickname as a kid was Dumbo.
Oh boy. Well, thanks again. I look forward to competing with you for the rest of the year.
Awesome, man. Look forward to you, Steve. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
David.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.